What's up, boys and girls? Welcome to another installment of Culturally Irrelevant, the podcast where we discuss a collection of today's most culturally significant topics. We'll stay grounded in a biblical worldview. We'll have a lot of fun along the way. My name is Miguel. I'm joined by my best friends and quickly becoming yours, Will Russell and Brandon West. What's up, boys? Welcome back to Mr. Russell. We missed you the last couple weeks. We're happy to have you back on board.
That's how you do a welcome back.
That's wonderful.
We kind of steamrolled right through yours last week, Brandon. I that was on me, bro. I'm sorry. I was like, welcome back, blah, 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 and launched into something.
Yeah, launched into more Will talk.
Yeah,
honestly,
it was a little hurtful.
He was more in your mind than I was, and I was sitting right in front of you.
This is true.
That's typical.
It feels nice to know that I've been missed.
Yeah,
I like that.
We missed you. But do have a lot of pressure today because this is the last and final configuration of the trio as we try to truly figure out who the weak link is in this operation. So,
pressure's on me. I do have a litany of corrections to be made, so I'll wait for the corrections portion of the show. But last week was pitiful, absolutely pitiful.
Pitiful.
Yeah, I do too. I'll tell you what, and we'll save it for the corrections corner, but just a little sneak peek. Got friggin' hammered by the international hockey community.
Oh.
Of everything that we said last week. And I thought I said some things that some might find controversial, and it was because I underplayed the Four Nations. But again, we'll get to that later.
You absolutely underplayed that. That was part of the corrections, so
I still have thoughts.
I thought you were going to bring up this new flock of flaming lib haters that we seem to be acquiring on social media. It's been pretty interesting to see the fire come. It's like, man, I guess we're saying something right if those are the people that are upset.
No, it was all about hockey. All those people.
All right.
It was all hockey.
All right.
Which you might want to lean into that audience, by the way, but that's just something we'll take note of and handle off the...
We can continue to set fire to the hockey fandoms everywhere.
Yeah, I think so. Will, how was your flight last week? Did you have fun?
I had a blast. I watched Mississippi State beat Texas A&M from the Admirals Lounge in Charlotte, North Carolina.
At a sport?
Basketball, yes. We're playing basketball right now.
That's one of the real ones, too.
As a matter of fact, as we speak right now, Mississippi State is playing Alabama at Alabama. So I'm foregoing watching that game to be with you jamokes here.
I'm glad we could give you an out from having to endure that.
That is impressive. Also, we're into the hundreds of followers and listeners now, so they all appreciate you skipping on some Mississippi State basketball to come here and bless us with your takes. I can hear their voices in droves saying, "Thank you, Will. Thank you, Will."
Everybody missed it.
All our listeners out there, please comment in whatever medium you have that you're thankful that you too don't have to watch Mississippi State basketball play tonight, and instead are watching us stream live or listening to us stream live.
Hey, were you joking in the chat last week, or did you actually go to the U.S.-Canada final? I thought you said something about that last week, that you were going to that game.
No, I think somebody else that I know wanted to go to that game.
Well, it's good you didn't go because that would have been a disappointing loss to be at, but that's okay.
Yeah, you would have had to fight through a sea of Canadians on your way out, taunting you with niceties and politeness.
Your team isn't that good, eh?
So sorry. We beat you.
I just watched the grossest video not an hour ago, and I'm still not sure it's real or fake, but it's this Canadian cooking Wagyu beef, and he basically soaks it in maple syrup for like a day and then just sears each side for 45 seconds and then eats it.
No.
And it looked disgusting.
That's probably not bad. You guys, get off your high horses.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It looked pale, floppy. It looked weird.
I feel like we're just layering it on when it comes to the Canadians. They have a lot to layer on, but they're not all bad. We got poutine, as was mentioned last week. Excellent.
There's a lot of groups that listen to this show. We have a diverse audience out there. Canadians are not a group that I'm going to pander to. I will not be pandering to Canadians, and honestly, if that means that we lose Canadian viewership, so be it.
No Canadians? Not even the great one?
Who's the great one?
Wayne Gretzky.
Well, whose side was he on last week? Answer that one for me.
He was cheering for the Americans.
Oh,
if that's fine.
Man.
We're gonna clip that and put it on TikTok. We're gonna see
Wayne Gretzky cheering for the Americans.
No, they weren't cheering for the. He was cheering for the. That'll be a viral clip for sure. I like it.
Yeah.
The viral clips, I've been seeing a lot about this bird flu, and I'm starting to freak out a little bit, and I need my boys to talk me off the ledge. I feel like after COVID, every time that somebody tries to talk about something like this, I immediately want to be like, no, it can't be true. But at the same time, I really like beef, and now I'm a little nervous because it's supposed to be spreading to our cows, and everybody's saying now everything's gonna get ruined. And I don't know. Have you guys been in on this? Do you believe it? Do you feel like this is something we got to worry about after COVID, or something that we assume is gonna get blown up?
You know what? I'm convinced that my doctor's in on this little gig because every time I go to the doctor for my physical, they're like, your blood pressure's too high. Stop eating red meat. You need to eat more chicken.
Interesting.
So they drove me to chicken, and now we have the bird flu. So I think this has big pharma and big hospitals written all over it.
Yeah, that's a hit attempt if you ask me.
For sure. Get off the beef and go to chicken. What is he paid by Chick-fil-A or something? That's ridiculous.
Right. The big chicken. Big chickens out there pushing this.
This is why you listen to Culture Irrelevant, because we get to the bottom of things. Big chicken is the culprit.
Yeah, I've learned anything from Chick-fil-A. Big chicken is actually just a bunch of cows.
It really is. You know what? Forget you guys who are out there poo-pooing us on not doing our due diligence and our research on the topics. It was Brandon. Somebody was commenting some nasty comments on our TikTok videos, and you know what? I'm not gonna settle for that. Like my logic is sound here. My doctor in on it. All doctors pushing all of these people to stop eating red meat and to chicken, in on it.
Your doctor's probably a cow. Have you ever checked for horns?
Oh my God, I've never actually thought about that.
100%.
My doctor might be.
Yeah. You got to ask the questions. You honestly have to do some of your own research whenever you go to the doctors. They'll try to tell you not to, but most of the time it's because they're scared that you're going to figure out they're a cow.
That's what they're trying to hide.
Yeah. So you ever see the doctors with mug that say, "Don't mistake Google for my medical degree"? It's a cow.
Man, I don't want to get too deep into that topic because we've had some interesting experiences with medical professionals over the last few months, and I'm not out here to say that they can't be believed, but I have a hard time being impressed by an entire segment of industry that never seems to panic when the patient is panicking. It's like this complete insistence on, we're just going to take everything chill and we're not going to get back to you in time and we're not going to get you the things you need right away because don't worry. Meanwhile, we're sitting here like, yo, we got broken body parts and pain and freaking out. So I don't know. I feel like I'm on the dark side of the medical industry, and I don't want to be. I know some really good people in the medical industry that are great doctors, great physicians, but the experience I have in general when I need it, it's vastly different than when I'm sitting on a couch just chatting up a doctor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Any chance that David has the bird flu, by the way?
Oh, maybe that's why he's not here.
Well,
we are missing our fourth man, right?
That's true. I'm just realizing we never asked why he wasn't going to be here today.
Well, because he said he wasn't going to be here with such a bad attitude. We were like, okay, bro. Okay.
Hey,
I'm just kidding, David. We love you. I'm
easy.
just kidding. I know he's listening, so I'm just trying to troll him a little bit. All right, let's talk about a real topic, a real news topic, something that has been in the zeitgeist for years and seems to have resurrected. Jeffrey Epstein.
Jesus.
He's back.
Very different.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself? Whoa.
So I've been trying to do a little bit of journalistic research today. I've been digging into this whistleblower that came out and has been talking. The whistleblower was broadcast on Benny Johnson's radio show, who I had no idea who was, but a quick chat GPT shows some work history. I actually know someone at the organization that he used to work at, and I'm being vague on purpose, but I had a conversation today and was able to confirm that he was kind of in and out of that organization, but he was never somebody that was looked at with derision or doubt, not necessarily someone that was looked at as like the Bible of information, but he doesn't seem to be someone we can just throw away as an individual, and he's platforming this person that's claiming that the FBI is currently deleting Epstein files right now, even after we just signed a new director of national intelligence, and the Trump campaign has been talking about how they're going to release these things and give us more truth, but now there's a whistleblower out there saying that things are getting deleted. I have two questions. One is the always, what can I believe? But the second one is something like that possible this late in the game? I mean, if they were going to delete stuff, wouldn't that have gotten removed or destroyed way earlier? Why would that be something that's surfacing now all of a sudden when it's been forgotten already for, I mean, what are we going on, like 3-4 years that it faded out of relevancy and now it's kind of coming back? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I would probably say that, when you have files like something like an Epstein file that's readily available to the bureau or whatever department is holding on to this said file, deleting it like instantaneously or a month after the fact, probably not a good idea, right? So naturally, something like this comes around, people start talking about it again. You can delete it then, because people are
Less
because
suspicious.
it's back, right? It's back. I don't know. I don't know what Brandon is doing right now, folks. He is doing some interior decorating right now. Is what it would appear. Yeah, I don't. It would make more sense to me that be allowed to exist for the certain time that they could trust. They in their minds could trust the people who are in charge of managing that information. But now that they can't trust, whomever owns that information, they're going to do their level best to get rid of
Interesting.
it.
All of a sudden, it becomes a crisis of now that different people are in charge, we might actually need to look into destroying some of this stuff. I guess that's. I mean, first of all, it's a pretty informative take because I didn't think about that early on. It's more sketchy.
It looks suspicious if you're immediately deleting Jeffrey Epstein files as soon as they just fit.
Is nobody checking the recycle bin on everybody's PC? Just to see if, like Epstein _ final something.
What if that was like DOGE's like Achilles heel? Like DOGE had everybody dead to rights except the fact that they just took all of the information that they didn't want to put it in the recycling bin on their PC.
Let's be honest.
If they'll never find it here.
If we guessed,
they have a folder that says "not interesting, do not click."
Do not open. I mean, if we guessed the average age of a federal employee, it's probably pretty high. So I would say the likelihood of a significant portion not understanding how your recycle bin works could actually be pretty high.
Maybe. I bet the average age is like late 30s, early 40s.
No. In the entire federal government, average age being in 30s or 40s?
You don't think about like congressmen. Think about the actual people that are working for the congressman. You take every congressman and multiply it by 10. I don't know why I'm talking about it. Will probably has a better idea than
all
me.
The people that are under. Maybe you're right.
Well, I mean, it depends on. There are two different workforces that you're talking about here. There's the federal executive, and then there's the federal legislative, and then there are the federal careers out there, right? And I would say that if you broke down for the legislative, it's like mid 30s or early 30s. If you broke down executive, probably going to skew more toward 40. But when we talk about the careers, those are the guys who have been there. They have their career job that they don't leave for 20 years, and you can't fire them because it's illegal. And go down the list of reasons why, and they're all sitting behind their desk and in their tennis shoes and poop-colored brown suits with their orange ties and like typing away with their two fingers on a computer keyboard.
Yeah, maybe rocking a pair of Nunn Bush.
Yeah, something like that. Something absolutely absurd, just preposterous to look at in an office setting.
But also extremely practical.
Sure, and practicality is what the government's all about.
All about, duh. That's why there's never any issues.
Exactly.
Well, hopefully all of that starts to change. We're getting some fresh faces into our government, but it also seems like we are getting
We still have some really bad ones, though, too. Did you see, is Dan Crenshaw the most disappointing congressman
Man, that was
to enter Congress
wild, huh?
ever? I remember whenever he first got elected and thinking, like, this guy's awesome. He's, a military veteran. He wounded in the line of duty, lost his eye, looks cool, Republican from Texas, slam dunk. And now he just can't get out of his own way.
I try to not keep up and like pay attention to whiny little wash-ups. What happened?
Ooh, shots fired.
What did he do?
During an interview, there was a hot mic moment to where the interviewer asked him if he had done an interview, I believe, sorry if I'm wrong, I believe the interviewer asked him if he had done something with Tucker Carlson, and in the hot mic moment, Dan Crenshaw responds with, no, and if I ever see him, I'm going to kill him.
He denied that, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, and then Community
Crenshaw
Notes.
denied it, even though there was a recording of it.
And yeah, then Community Notes put the link to the recording where you could see his own lips moving. But he thinks he's one of these cool, hip kind of congressmen who are one with the people kind of thing. Because whenever somebody, made the accusation or asked him about it, he replied to it on X just saying, no. And then Community Notes comes back and says, hey, dum-dum.
Hey, we'll find out next year if he's in tune with the people or not, because he's got to get reelected next year.
That's true. It's just thing after thing. I mean, he's so lockstep with the establishment, but then it's just these weird little gaffes. Do you remember, what was it? A few years ago, whenever he got into an argument with a little girl during during a press conference, and a little girl asked a question. I think it was about his faith. And then, this girl is literally maybe 10, 11, and she asked him, old. And he stands up and he looks at her. He's like, "If you ever question my faith, that's the most important thing in the world." And he's like, "What are you doing, dude?" If you haven't seen the video, you have to watch. It's one of the funniest things ever.
Read the room.
She's like, "Okay, sorry."
Wow.
She's like, "Are you a plant for one of the mainstream media?"
It's great, and but I'm sure in his head he was thinking this is gonna be my moment with the evangelical crowd where I'm standing up for my. It's
victory.
No, you idiot.
Man.
That girl's dad is a deacon in the local church. Why are you yelling at her?
She was so excited to be here.
Could you imagine the irreparable damage that's been done to this girl? Moving forward for the rest of her life, she's going to remember that time she was yelled at by a congressman.
Yeah, she was just trying to have a paper to write for her social studies class in 7th grade. Come on, dude.
That's funny.
That's when you realize some people are just primed to fight. But I don't want to talk about Dan Crenshaw, who is, and I quote, a whiny washout. I want to talk about some of the people that came in that are bangers. I want to start with number one, Mr. Kash Patel. He gets approved. He's the new director of the FBI. And I believe that some of us on this show are pretty big fans of Mr. Patel. Is that correct?
Yes.
He's fine.
He's okay.
Will, please remember you have a microphone.
He's fine. He's fine. I was actually looking for the little applause button that we can hit. I don't know where our mix point. You say Kash Patel. Every time we say Kash Patel, I want applause. Just no, I'm very excited for Kash. Kash's confirmation is going to has already brought revolutionary change to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It is high time that those guys start doing exactly what they were made to do, and that's investigate real actual crimes instead of wasting their time doing the political bidding of their overlords. And I think that Kash is the perfect person to be in that place to actually go out. He's a former prosecutor. The guy knows what's good, what's bad. And it's pretty simple. He's going to follow the law the way the law is written. That's exactly what we're looking for. We're not looking for people to make up crimes or make up allegations to then refer to the Department of Justice to carry out weirdo indictments just for political purposes. That's not going to happen.
Political witch hunt officially.
I didn't want to say
style.
the W. I didn't want to say WH, but hey,
bigger word.
It is for several
guys.
people.
Stop being so uninformed. My goodness.
Wait, is that a bad thing to say?
I mean, you can say it if you want to. I'm just triggered by WH.
The White House.
Yeah, exactly.
No, give us a quick rundown. Just a couple things that, he's coming in and going to get rock and rolling on right now that we can expect and kind of long term.
I'm pretty sure he's already moved 1,500 agents out of the D.C. Bureau or something ridiculous number to that. He sent 500 of them to Alabama. What are you doing? What are you going to do down there?
Heck yeah.
It's awesome. I think the crux of the matter is going after the actual people who are committing crimes, the ones who need to be put in jail. Not the ones not making up fake charges and referring it to DOJ for them to prosecute. That's ridiculous. And truth be told, The president has already acted on this, like when they threw a bunch of pro-life, not protesters, they were simply praying on sidewalks and trying to intervene at abortion clinics, and they're being thrown in prison by the Department of Justice and arrested by the FBI under some stupid archaic law. And the president, not archaic, it was recently passed, but under some stupid law, and the president is releasing them back into the world where they rightfully should be. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to anticipate the changing the priorities of the FBI and their investigative process, focusing on existential threats to America, both internal here domestically and also internationally.
So, like, not necessarily concerned parents at a school board meeting.
Exactly. I walks in and follows them back to their car.
They're finally off the hook. They're no longer domestic terrorists.
Exactly. Well,
thank God.
We'll see just how far the deep state goes. Okay?
Right.
So
not for that reason. Not for the school board, but maybe other things. I guess we can't, correct. We don't want to give anybody an out.
It is kind of depressing that these kind of jokes can even be made about a federal agency that was supposed to represent something and then becomes so far and away from that original intent that we can sit around here and crack jokes. But you're talking about a federal agency with thousands of employees that are supposed to be doing X and they're doing Y and Z instead. Like, it's crazy that it's gotten to that point.
The reason we're going to have this conversation here now is because this podcast is the one thing that the FBI is not listening in on. So
that's because they can't control us. They've offered me a lot of money, but I continue to say no and stand on my 2 feet.
Good.
That we will not come under the influence of the FBI.
You're not going to give them the backdoor access to our Riverside account?
So strong.
Unless Mr. Cash Patel decides otherwise, sir, we are open to anything that you need, and we're available for you.
If you need access to our Riverside account, we'll give it to you. Just let us know.
I'll text them immediately afterwards.
Mr. FBI Director Patel, if you want to, you can shut us down right now. We won't resist.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll be like, if it came from him, we believe.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the other confirmations, RFK and Tulsi Gabbard. But since we're on Cash Patel, over the weekend, there were some stories about that. Well, let me put it this way. I want to know how to receive what I think is information that's at least truthful, or it's describing facts that have been observed. So we're seeing these reports that Elon sends out this email to federal agencies, and then a couple of days later, we're seeing reports that Cash Patel is undoing that or saying it against it. And then a couple of days later, Elon Musk he's back into it with a second email. When I see that as a layperson, am I supposed to take all of that at face value, or am I supposed to take that with a lot of salt? I mean, it makes it appear like all these people that we were excited about getting into government are now suddenly not on the same page. Is that true, or is that part of something that they want to be presented that way, or is it just a misconstruing of facts because the left is just desperately hunting for anything that they can glom onto that will show that it's terrible?
What specifically are you talking about?
So I think Musk sent out the email on Thursday. It was like Wednesday or Thursday. That federal employees email. You got to answer this email with what you're doing, and if you don't respond, you lose your job. Then 2 days later, it comes out that Cash Patel has told all of his people, disregard this email. It doesn't apply to you. And then there's uproar. Then it comes out that the federal government sue Elon Musk because of that email. And then like the next day, it comes out, Elon Musk tweets with the president's, I don't remember the word is, like with the president's approval, this is going to go out again, and we're going to get a second chance. And if you don't answer this time, you're fired. So there's like this back and forth between people that seem to not be on the same page. They're disagreeing with what each other is saying.
That email better go out. There was a vote held on X. We won. They needed to throw the email. That was a joke.
I'm thinking of how to process this, because I'm not, obviously we three are not in the inner workings of what DOGE is doing, but I can see this from a couple different angles. From Cash's and others like him, from their angle, a lot of the work that they do heavily influences the national security posture of the United States, and probably shouldn't be put in an email and sent to a GSA account.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But I think that this is all being done on purpose for a couple of reasons. One, it's to prove the point that we as a federal government need to be or they as a federal government need to be more focused on the task at hand and the things that they are actually accomplishing. For the agencies that do have national security implications, I would assume that there's going to be a version of this that is not contorted, but they find a way to be able to give some sort of holistic report on a weekly basis to a superior or to the director or whatever the case may be. For the rest of the government, I think this was actually a test. I think this was a test to see who's paying attention and who's not, right? I think that they're hypothetically, it's pretty smart, right? To see where the friends are, right? If you're a federal government employee and you're confident in the work that you're doing, I assume that you're going to be able to respond to an email that says, list off five accomplishments that you made this week. For those who are not true believers, those who are not like actively engaged in the process, those who like don't give a rip what anybody has to say, they're going to be the ones who either respond with they're either not going to respond or they're going to respond in some snarky something or another, and that way we'll know. It's like it's almost asking them to out themselves, if that makes sense.
So that is a take that I've not heard anywhere until tonight, because it's true. If I've been put in charge of a large swath of enterprise, and I put out there, hey, why don't you send me real quick what you have, especially if I'm a well-known person, or at least a person that's already been publicly established as like, I'm in charge of this, and you have an opportunity to report to me as this really established, famous person. If I think you're right, if you're doing
the way has the authority at this point,
right,
in your career,
it's not just a Twitter account that got made for fun. It's somebody working with the authority of the president. If I'm doing a good job, I'm going to have to edit that email down to 5 points. I'm going to be looking forward to the opportunity to share with Elon Musk. 5, buddy, I'll give you 30 things I did this week because I've been doing my job hard and I'm excited to brag about it. Whereas if I've been sitting around playing on my phone all the time, if I've been bumming it, if I've been, or worse, just actively manipulating my job for nefarious purposes, I'm definitely going to land myself squarely in that second box of like, these people didn't respond or responded nastily. That definitely categorizes you automatically versus the people that did respond appropriately.
I mean, the response of "how dare you" is not a good response. Like that's not going to be received. Like you're going to have to like produce or you're done. This is part of the benchmarks and the requirements. And he did the same thing from what I understand when he took over X, or what was Twitter. Like he sent that same kind of email out. And my assumption here is, again, he's trying to find the people who are actively engaged and read and want to be here versus the people who are just like, go pound sand, Elon, like we don't have to listen to you. That's a bad attitude to be taking to a guy who has the authority to fire you.
Yeah. Well, he did say as much that he's just, in some ways, just looking to see who's even caring enough to check their emails in the first place.
Very true.
Because it was mentioned, I don't know if we touched on it, but failure to respond to the email was taken as a resignation. So if you don't respond to your email and you're not even up to the point where you care enough about your job to where you're looking at your email on a even a weekly basis, then we might, be able to assume that you're not really engaged in the first place.
We should probably reconsider your employment here.
This is literally the easiest thing you should be doing on a daily basis, and you can't even do that. And that's a problem. But then, like you all said, there's definitely a whole swath of people out there who are looking for opportunities to undermine the authority that has been, bestowed to DOGE. And, we say Elon Musk, but it's not Elon Musk. This is actually, a mandated office appointed by the sitting president. But even still, you have these people who they just, they have an axe to grind, and they're looking for ways to where it's like, well, if Elon Musk is talking about it on X, then, this is stupid and silly and blah, 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 blah. And I think, I'm hoping that over time, a lot of these people are going to come to the realization that it's like, we're not on your side. Like if that's where you're coming from, it's like we're not going to pick up a pitchfork and go to war for you because you can't think of the 5 things that you've done in the past week. It's like it goes back to the meme that's been shared, a million times at this point, to where it's like, Elon Musk is, has all this power and doing these things. It's like, but, don't you feel stupid because you didn't vote for Elon Musk? And it's like, no, idiot. This is exactly what we voted for. This is it. Like, this is thrilling every day.
Okay, so let's take this, and this is culturally irrelevant, right? We are going to have a biblical worldview spin on all of this.
Yes, let's go.
So let's
Spin it up.
let's do this.
Hit me, DJ.
So my wife and I go to a church in Northern Virginia that has previously presented this scenario of in an effort to achieve more government efficiency, it's oftentimes throwing government workers into chaos. They call it chaos and confusion, right, for their jobs. I'm really proud of my church because there was this past Sunday, one of the during the pastoral prayer, an elder stepped up, and before he prayed, he's kind of walked through like what we need to be praying about. This we need to be praying for, those who are being fired, actively being fired, or those who are concerned that they're about to be let go from the federal government. But also understand the flip side of this, that there are a lot of people out there that do want to see this government efficiency, and that either way, no matter what happens here, nothing surprises God, nothing takes him. He's in charge of everything. He's in control of everything. He's the omniscient, omnipotent God that he is, right? His sovereignty reigns over all.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to be a measured response, because my response every single time that I'm presented with these federal employees that are going to get fired or have been fired or whatever the case may be, my response to them is kind of like, so what? Like, welcome to living in America. In fact, most of America has had to deal with this at some point over their professional careers, if not for the last 4 years under the Biden administration, where we had an economy that shrank. So forgive me if I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for you having to deal with, trials and tribulations in a professional setting for the first time in your life.
Yeah.
Because you've worked for the federal government. And as far as I'm concerned, working in any job, there is no get out of jail free card. And the reality is, working for the government, there is no get out of jail free card. You should be held to a standard and subject to guidelines and to benchmarks that I expect you to meet. And if you don't meet them, you're done. It's over.
Yeah, I definitely have sympathy for, a lot of the people that are, I won't say all of them, but a lot of the people that are losing their jobs because of what's going on right now. But ultimately, I think what needs to be remembered is first of all, I'm sure there are people who were doing their best that are going to lose their job. And again, for people like that's terrible. That sucks. It sucks for anybody. It's a scary situation. I've been through it. I'm sure all of us maybe have been through it at a time in our lives where it's like, it's scary, especially if you have a family, it's scary. But I think what needs to be remembered is these people, they're ultimately, they're casualties of, they're casualties of the people who were making the decisions, whether it be 10, 20, 30 years ago, that they were making decisions that they probably assumed that maybe there would be repercussions for later on down the road. They were trying to serve an agenda that was not ultimately for the benefit of the American people at large. They were trying to serve something that was not that. And now these, unfortunate people, sadly, are paying the price for it. So people can get mad and shake their fist at DOGE and Donald Trump and everything else, but they're not the ones that did this to them. These other people could have had other careers, but go ahead.
That is the point here. That is the absolute point. You were not a victim of what Donald Trump is trying to do. You were a victim of what a lot of people from decades before you, not even decades before you, but maybe even just as recently as a couple of years before you, made. Those decisions that they made to expand the federal workforce so it's so bloated that it's unsustainable and incredibly inefficient. Those are the people that you should be angry about, because they're the ones who allowed you to be put in this position in the first place.
Exactly.
And I will add, there is a next to 0% chance that after a federal program, department, administration is established, there's a next to zero chance that program is going to be rolled back or demolished completely, right? And so all of these years, Congress or whomever, the executive branch, mandates that, let's just say, the Department of Education. Department of Education, we want you to cut your budget by 10% over the next 20 years. Okay, great. That's fantastic. They say, we'll do that. We'll do just that. They come up with a plan over a course of time. They lay it out to everybody. They say, here's a 20-year plan. They back end all of the actual cuts, the 10% across the board cuts, to years 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 in order to maintain some stability on the front end. They take that plan, they send it off to the CBO. The CBO scores it, says they're going to save this much money over this amount of time, and then they pass it off as this is the answer. Well, guess what? The following year, they just go and make their budget requests to Congress all over again, and nothing changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so for DOGE, for the president, what he's trying to accomplish here are massive cuts on the front end, because that's the only way that we're ever going to accomplish any fiscal responsibility. Is you got to do it draconian, you got to do it fast, and you got to do it now. Because if you allow these bureaucrats to come up with the plan's, one, never going to be installed. Two, even if they start making cuts now, they're just going to go back the following year and make the budget request all over again. It's going to be astronomical,
Exactly.
and it's going to not fit the budget as you've laid out.
Yeah.
Like that's just the way it is.
Right.
Yeah, the conversation that I've been having with people is, or at least the stance I always fall to is, man, burn it down and rebuild it. And what's good is going to make it back, and what doesn't make it back didn't need to be there. But going back to the Bible perspective, I think we also we kind of see it in the one example that we have of Jesus being angry. And it's in the temple, right? When he walks in and he sees all these people that have decided to turn his father's house into a little shop. And there's money changing and things being sold. And he destroys the entire thing. And so right away I'm like, you see, it's very clear. You got to burn it all down and start over. But where I get caught up is that's the singular example we have of Jesus and his righteous anger. All the other examples we have are of him being compassionate, being empathetic, being forgiving, while accomplishing the greatest tear down and rebuild that's ever been seen on the earth. I mean, he tears down the castle of death that our sin has built, and he resurrects from the grave, and with it resurrects us into eternal life. Like he literally burns down everything that we've made and rebuilds it brand new. But he doesn't do it with pride and blistery rage. He does it with compassion and even with praying for forgiveness from the cross. And so I don't really know what the correct spot is, but I think that there's, at the very least, there's room for both. I'm excited that things are being fixed. At the same time, if it was me and I was in those shoes, it would stink. And I can hold that thought and have that empathy aside from, I mean, yeah, I feel bad for you, but still it should happen. No. I feel bad for you. I'm sorry if you're getting caught up in this. I'm sorry if there was a little bit of that USAID money that was going to good places and you were one of those good places. I'm sorry. I don't want you to have to go through that. But at the same time, I don't want the system to continue the way it is. And so if I was part of that system, I would have to accept the same consequences.
Yeah, I think ultimately people, especially in the political landscape today, people are just so dang emotional about everything. But ultimately, you have to remember, we don't celebrate the cuts because we hate the people that are working the jobs.
Right.
Just like I don't, if I'm trying to rein it in.
Speak for yourself, buddy.
Yeah, I will. But it is in the same way. It's like if we're trying to rein it in on my own family's budget and we decide not to go out to dinner that week, it's not because I hate the restaurant and don't want to give him my business, or I hate the waiter that, normally takes my order. It's just because this is what I have to do right now. And, I'm sorry that that's going to amount to you making less money this week, but unfortunately, this is what we got to do. So, all I think this stuff together, I think, we've kind of painted the picture, I think pretty well, at least from a biblical perspective. I think it's perfectly fine to be happy about the government finally, being responsible stewards of, what's allowed the United States to be the most prosperous, richest country in the history of the world. I think, biblically speaking, I think a lot of that has been squandered over the years. I think it's been, sinful the way in which the leaders that have been put into power have taken the money from the citizens and used it on things that, again, didn't help the citizens. I think, if you are a believer in Congress and you're voting on those things, I think that's sinful. And now I think, to right the ship again, it sucks for the people. It's a hard thing.
Inevitably, this is the responsibility of the church. So if we need to lay any of the blame on anyone here, the blame should be squarely laid at the feet of the North American church to failing the people here. Like the responsibility.
Elaborate. Failing the people in what?
What we're talking about here is turning to the federal government as the god, as the provider,
okay,
as the center of the nuclear family. When that is not the position of the church. It should
Accurate
not be.
Theological teaching would not create a scenario where people are believing that.
Where people are relying on the government. Now, there are instances where people fall on hard times, or there's split families, or God forbid there's a death, or whatever the case may be. That's a circumstance that is not a good situation to be in. It's also the responsibility of the church to step into the fray and to be able to help out the community. That's part of the responsibility of the church. I'll use a really great example of like after-school child tax credits, after-school child care tax credits, right? Whose responsibility is it to take care of your kids? Is it the government's responsibility to take care of your kids, or is it your responsibility to take care of the kids? Because they are your kids, right? Should we be relying on our government to provide funding to accomplish whatever it is that you need to accomplish in your daily lives? Like I have a hard time squaring that, right?
I'll give you well, I can't talk about it too much because legal proceedings are still going on. However, over the last few months, I have come away with this deep belief that you don't need socialism. You just need good churches.
Yeah.
Because the journey that my family and I have walked through has been devastating. But the way the church has rallied around us from day one, not only feeding us, but even laying money at our feet for things that we needed to cover in emergency. I mean, I've just sat back over and over again and been like, this
the model works.
Yes, the model works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the root, I think, whenever, of course, there are wonderful churches out there, and I think, we go to one of them, and, and it's awesome to hear the ways that, the church rallied around you to serve your family in your time of need. But I think you have so many churches out there that are not wonderful churches, and I think the root of their message, whenever, they get angry about, it's like, well, you can't cut X welfare program. Don't you care about people? Or, you can't, how can you be against something like, single payer healthcare? Don't you care about the person? And it's like, what you don't understand is like, I actually do care about the person, but all I'm hearing out of your lips is that you don't care enough about them to the point where you're willing to actually help them. You would rather shift responsibility for the government to take care of them.
Yep.
It's like, no, yep. I understand that, if welfare programs get cut and people have a harder time, they're going to need somewhere to go. And that's where I say, and I know my church says, it's like, come to us because we have a pretty dang comprehensive solution for a lot of the things that you're dealing in with your life right now. Please come to us. Let us help you. Let us serve you. Whereas you have these churches over here who are saying, if they can't go to
tax-free tithes and then sending people to the government
right,
for help.
There's an old saying for this. It's the subtle blank of lower expectations. Sexism, bigotry, racism, insert whatever you word. So the subtle bigotry of lower expectations. So if I'm not, as a person, holding my fellow accountable and expecting more out of them, then I'm failing them as a person. And that's kind of where we've arrived at the church, is instead of challenging each other through a sanctification process, to be better, try to do better, then we're not doing our job. It's kind of, I apply this to our faith just as much as I could apply it to the work that we do on a daily basis, because the work that we do, the people that we serve, the families that we raise, it's all biblical. It's all biblically mandated, right? And so I look at this and I think, if I'm not holding them accountable, then I'm not doing my job. If we're not holding our fellow man accountable, then we're failing them. And I think that therein lies, this entire conversation lies in a fundamental difference between the two groups of people that we're talking about here. Whether you want to label them Democrats or Republicans, whether you want to label them liberal versus conservative, the core principles around what we believe are based on the fact that man is inherently bad or man is inherently good. And if you're bad, you want to try to not be bad and try to be better. That is a process that we would, in religious circles, like what the three of us are in, we would call that a sanctification process, right? We come to Jesus. That's wonderful. But just because you've come to Jesus and you've accepted him as your Lord and Savior, and the only way that you're going to go to heaven, that doesn't mean that you get to get out and go rob a bank or
right. It's not licentiousness, as Paul says.
Right.
Grace is not there for me to sin all the more.
It doesn't mean that you can get behind the wheel of a car drunk and go kill somebody, right? And everything be okay. But at the same time, let's flip it over and say man is inherently good and they're just a victim of their circumstance. Like, I can't get behind that. Man is born bad, right? And that's the difference between what we're talking about here is by not holding each other accountable and by not challenging each other to do better. You can always do better. We're not being totally honest with ourselves, and that is the core principle. It's one of the reasons why these days of old, when I can remember as recently as the 2010s, part of the 2010s, there being kind of a little bit of a mantra in Congress of like Republicans and Democrats, liberals, conservatives, we all want America to succeed. We just have different ways of accomplishing that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that exists anymore. I don't believe that feeling exists anymore. I think that's days of old. That ship has sailed. What we're doing is trying to hold people accountable through the actions that we're taking as conservatives. The liberals are out there trying to replace God with government and have government be the sole provider for a broken group of people that refuse to try to get better.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's a great overview of the crises that plague us as humanity. Is who are we worshiping? Because nobody can stand and say, I worship nothing. It's simply a question of who or what do you worship? Because you worship. You were created to worship. You were created to follow after and attach yourself to something greater than yourself. And the ultimate plan was that you would do that with God, because that was going to result in your perfect happiness and your complete enjoyment. But we don't. And so you're not worshiping God. You are not trusting in God. Then what are you worshiping? What are you trusting? Are you worshiping and trusting in government? Are you worshiping and trusting in policies and ideology? And I can speak the fix into the human race just by telling people what to do or what not to say or what to think. Okay, well, you're either worshiping yourself or another person or a government entity. But at the end of the day, you've replaced God. That's all you've done.
Yep. Everybody's searching for their God, and they'll find it one way or another.
All right. Just to close the loop that, Will, you opened, I just want to say I do love what your church is doing. I love the idea of praying over the people that are going to be negatively impacted from this. And I especially liked how you pointed out that there's this flaw in North American churches where this prevalence of bad theology leads people to rely on the government. And that's really something that stuck with me when you said it, because I've been chewing over the last few days. Saturday was when I read this news story from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't know if you guys have seen any of that, but they found a church in the DRC that had 70 believers beheaded inside the church. And I think if I remember correctly, they found the victims like a week after it happened.
Ooh.
There's Christians operating their faith under those kinds of circumstances all over the world. And what are we doing here? We are pulling up with our really nice cars into our straight white parking lines with our beautiful sanctuaries and our screens. And sometimes I wonder, like, is that why North American Christendom in general has just like flaked off? Because we're just weak and soft because we don't really have to do anything for our faith. It's really easy to be a worship leader. I get on a stage in front of a bunch of people that want to sing the songs that I bring them, and then at the end of the service they're like, "Wow, it was just so great." And then I go back to my regular life, and nobody asks me if I'll deny Jesus Christ or they'll kill my wife. But like that happens to people all the time, and I wonder if my faith would be different if I didn't live under such soft circumstances. I don't know.
There will be more Christians in the world next year than there have ever been at any point in the history of time.
That is a pretty wild stat, how exponential it is, huh?
They are not found in North America. The North American church is shrinking, and that's a great example as to why it's shrinking.
But it's not. I don't think it's the building. I don't think it's the luxury. I think
I'm
people
definitely
get
not
caught
trying
up.
to knock all that stuff in general.
No,
so
I know that, but I
So
don't.
we should be going to
I don't
church.
think it's all those
we've already done
shanties.
Yeah.
Hey, boys.
You should be allowed to drive your car. You should be able to walk to church, and that's the only mode of accepted transportation.
You're just
Walking.
saying that because you don't live in Florida anymore. You
That's
don't have to
right.
endure the summers.
That's right. I don't have to endure
it's
the
100
summers.
degrees outside.
Yes. Walk to church.
No, but I think it's the preaching. I think it can
I think you're
boil
right.
down to that by and large. I think you have pastors all over the country who have left out inconvenient truths at the pulpit. And I think they've let a bunch of people who hate God dictate what they can and cannot say about God. And for the sake of, filling their sanctuaries by their own hand versus trusting God to whether allow the church to live or die depending on his will for it. And I think that has just blown up to incredible proportions in our faces to where are the people at this point who are willing to stand up and tell the truth? And guess what? There's not many.
I'm excited to share with the listening audience, and I challenge you. You can go on this journey with me. There is a book that I've just recently found that I'm really excited to dig into by Paul Coughlin. It's called No More Mr. Nice, No More Mr. Christian Nice Guy. No More Christian Nice Guy. That's what it is. More Christian.
Let's try that title again, just for the sake of who wrote it.
Yeah, just so they know what to Google.
Will has a fantastic book recommendation. Go for it, Will.
No More Christian Nice Guy.
There you go. That was clean.
It's when being nice instead of good hurts men, women, and children. Being nice instead of good.
It sounded fun at first, and then it became convicting.
It is. I think it's the systemic problem in the North American church. We'd rather be nice, not offend anybody, not be able to stand up on our principles, biblical principles. That's the problem that we're all making as a church.
Right. Well, we've so utterly failed to strike the balance between, truth and love to where for the past, 20 years, maybe 30 years, it's been all love.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's been all love. We want you to feel, uber comfortable coming into the sanctuary. We don't want you to at any point feel like you don't belong here. We want to be, purely attractional. What was stepping into our church should be the same way you might feel when you're, stepping into a movie theater on a Saturday night. But the gospel is offensive. The gospel is, the most loving act in the history of the world. But it's also, it's deeply offensive because it tells you to, kill yourself. That's offensive. It's offensive to anybody when the first time they hear it.
It tells you to let your parents bury themselves and come follow me. It does make some radical calls.
Yeah.
But this is all part of, and not to turn this into a CCS promo, but so one of my roles is as executive director of the Center for Christian Statesmanship here in Washington, D.C., and in the title, Center for Christian Statesmanship. That is a challenge to the men and women who are working in Congress as elected officials or as the staff to be Christian statesmen. And what does that mean, right? I think that means that you're a statesman. When everyone thinks of a statesman, they think of someone who can strike the balance between standing on principles, but also having, being able to talk to other people, speaking across the aisle, being able to be with other people that they may disagree with. And then you add the component that there's a Christian worldview, a biblical worldview to this.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we need to be as Christians. We don't need to be calling people names. We don't need to be forcefully borderline mean to people about what we believe. But just because I'm nice to you doesn't mean that I disagree with you, that I don't disagree with you. I do. And I can walk you through the points as to why I disagree with you. It's all fundamentally found. This is where I'm based. This is what I believe and why I believe it. But that's what we're talking about here. This inability for people to look at someone else who they may disagree with and say, you know what, I disagree with you. I'm going to love you through our disagreements. That's okay that we disagree for now, but I would really, really like for you to come to my side. That's all. Over the course of time, you have this conversation. Like, obviously, with a non-Christian, I understand that you don't agree with what I have to say. I would surely pray that you will come to understand and see my position and then agree with me and believe what I believe. But I'm not going to sit there and berate the person for not agreeing with me. And that's kind of where the church today in North America, we need to have that conversation, an honest conversation with ourselves, and say, and ask that question, like, are we having those kind of conversations? Or are we just accepting the non-believer, the unbeliever, the sinner who refuses to repent just as they are?
Yeah.
Is that a detriment to your church? Yeah, it is.
I think so often we view Jesus dining with sinners as this example of, love over everything. And it always shocks me, the assumption that we make that the Son of God incarnate would have come down to earth, sat around with a table of drunkards and prostitutes, and said, I love you guys. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Don't worry. I love you. Like, obviously, his love and his condescension to these people is shown to be an act of salvation. He's doing it to give them the gospel, to give them the message, to bring them redemption. But then somehow we've twisted that into, like, no, like Brandon is saying, let love win more. Let it be more about making sure people feel good, making sure people feel comfortable, making sure people feel loved.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're not walking into hell with somebody preaching to you that you're jogging into heaven. That is where truth in love is applied. I love you. I want you to be overjoyed by God and filled by the Lord and living and walking with him. I don't want you to go to hell. And because I love you, there's a truth here that I want to be able to handle with you, to express to you, to teach to you, to apply in your life, whatever it is. I think you're right. We've lost a lot of the grasp on truth because we became so, and I say this as someone who has made a very recent turn over the last few years from being, I don't really want to talk about that because, I got to be a good testimony and I got to make sure that people like me because I'm a Christian. And if they don't like me, then how can I preach the gospel? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. They killed Jesus when he came, so clearly he was not very convinced that being liked was the priority.
Yeah, I think ultimately whenever you're trying to, share these necessary radical truths, specifically in a culture that is so dominated by this secular humanism that we see everywhere, to where all these things that we're saying, not the least of which, if you don't listen to me, you're going to hell. Again, very offensive. And also, I just want to make note, I didn't mean that the Bible says kill yourself. It's more like kill who you are and take up, the identity of Jesus, just for clarity.
Yes.
But
good.
I'm glad you said that because that was going to end up in the corrections portion.
Correction number 1: the Bible does not say to kill yourself.
Hey,
right.
That's
correct.
That's good. That's good clarity. But the passage that says "pick up your cross" would be modernly translated as "pick up your lethal injection and follow me." So it's true. The Bible is not telling you to kill yourself, but the Bible is telling you to deny yourself and give yourself up in return for something greater.
Yeah.
So
that's what I
don't want you to soften your
spiritual
stance
sense. In a spiritual sense.
That's certainly, yeah. So please, nobody misunderstand what I was saying. Anyways, So in the face of this radicalism that we, are not only, feel a desire to share, but we are compelled to share, it's going to be hard to receive. And this is where the love does have to play a role to whenever you're trying to convince somebody of these fundamental truths that are so detrimental to their lives. For them to accept it, there has to be an element of trust. And I think what's failed so many churches across the country by leaving out the truth, they've never established the trust all along with these individuals. So whenever it comes time to share these radical ideas with them, there's no foundation built. There's no foundation of trust that's been developed over time to where they're able to receive anything like that. So at the first sign of anything like this, these people, they crumble and they feel like the church has lied to them. And it doesn't even always amount to people leaving the church entirely, thank God, but you have seen kind of a resurgence in a lot of like liturgical styles of worship, like much more traditional styles of worship, just because I think so many people have seen kind of a lot of these churches kind of put up this attractional facade just for the sake of getting them there, and then they realize it's like
It's out of paper.
Right, without the tradition, it's like what is this, what is the rock on which this is all built? That wasn't meant to be like a pope thing, because I'm not Catholic, but but they wonder. So you see these upticks in membership at like Orthodox churches all over the country.
Speak to me.
Just because they want something to feel real. I have one of my closest friends who he actually did convert from agnostic to Catholicism, which I praise God for that, because I think he is a believer. He believes that but what did it for him, what kind of convinced him, was steeping in the tradition of where he was at, and kind of coming to this understanding of like there is this element of there is something so much greater that isn't out there, but it is here.
There's something trustworthy here.
Right, but I mean even in a sense that we all experience, where there is something greater in this world that, has to have a name. And he felt through the thousands of years of tradition in the Catholic Church, for him, a light bulb turned on to where he was like, this is, Jesus is who he claims to be. And it's an incredible thing. I wish, I wish he was a Protestant, but we have this conversation.
We'll get him there.
Maybe so, but if not, at the end of the day, I know, what he believes, and he believes that, Jesus lived a sinless life and died and rose again from the dead. And that's, awesome. He's also conservative, so he's one of the rare
Speaking of rising from the dead, can we raise our show notes from the dead? Because I'm pretty sure that we are so far off from where
but this is way better than those crappy show notes.
I was sitting here thinking we're probably going to move into some corrections corners and start wrapping up. And we had some other stuff on the table to talk about. I want to talk about RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and maybe get into the Ukraine and Russia stuff. But I don't know. I like this tangent we went on, because at the end of the day, for our objective and the audience that we are engaging with, we're trying to find a way to be actually not irrelevant, but relevant to our culture. But then how does that work itself when we call ourselves Christians and suddenly become what I would argue is maybe the most quote unquote irrelevant thing today, is to be a follower of Jesus Christ. So I think that intersection is really good. Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. I appreciate that tangent. Let's lighten it up a little bit though. You guys were teasing a bunch of corrections that you wanted to get into.
Your parking lot thing was so stupid.
Will, while we're getting into this, will you get your grab your cinnamon from the spice cabinet?
Yes, prepare for the cinnamon challenge.
Yeah. You have to do a stunt this week. You were voted.
Okay.
Go ahead. If you want to pile on the roast because you just felt left out, that you got missed on Pile on Miguel night last week, go ahead, Will. You can have your piece.
I missed
out
the
floor.
Yes, your assertion that backing into a parking spot is, and if you don't do that, you're lazy. You're a lazy driver. I think that's whole. That,
I don't know if I said a lazy driver or
you
it
did.
just means you're a bad
did
driver.
it. No, you lazy. You said you were a
I
lazy.
stand by it. If you don't back into a parking spot, you're a lazy driver. I stand by it.
I saw you pull into a parking lot.
The only people that I have ever seen back into a parking spot are some unsavory, shady people that I believe they think that they're going to need to make a quick exit.
Interesting.
They're
So
going to
back
commit a
in
crime.
back in parking belies an ulterior motive, is what you're saying?
Yes, well, think about it. Like, if you're going to go do something that is just seedy and something that is just holistically unsavory.
I gotta make a quick getaway.
Correct. And you're like, okay, I did that thing. Now I gotta, beat feet. Let's get on out of here. You're not gonna want to like hop in your car and then be like, check your mirrors and like throw the car in reverse and back it out. Like, doo 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 doo. No. You gotta be able to hop in your car, throw it and drive and go as fast as you can away from wherever you are.
What if I just always want that? I don't like looking at my mirrors and are there cars coming? Are there people coming?
Do not poo-poo.
Unsafe, bad drivers. There's all kinds
There
of
you go.
I could use.
Okay, that's fine. Don't label the rest of us out here who don't feel like that we're in any rush and can take the time to back out of a parking spot. Like, do not label us all of the pejoratives that you're using. Correction number 1. Correction number 2 was Elon Musk. We were talking about Elon Musk, or y'all were talking about Elon Musk and his 17 kids or however many he has.
Oh, yes. That was a fun topic.
This isn't so
You
much.
are one of his kids. Announcement.
I take offense to it all. This is exactly something right.
I'm number 18.
Dear old dad. He's always good to me. It's how I was able to afford this Yeti microphone.
Thanks, Dad.
This is not so much a correction, but this is a point that I wanted to add that we have additionally talked about. We've previously talked about this in other episodes.
Wait, to make this fit the segment, you have to pretend that there was somebody that wrote in with a comment.
Got it. We had a. I'm reading this verbatim.
Paul Gregorio from
sure, right.
Memphis, Tennessee.
Right.
It would come from Tennessee.
Dubuque, Iowa.
Yeah. What's Paul say?
Well, Paul says that we need to be weary of these kind of people because this is what cultural Christianity looks like, as opposed to true Christianity, which we have all discussed before, which is moralistic absent a higher authority. And when there is an absence of higher authority, then you have no one to be accountable to. Just a pile of guidelines that you probably should follow because your life's going to be marginally better if you follow them. This is the danger that we're talking about here. If we don't look at this eyes wide open. So those are my two. Two corrections.
That's a good addition to that point. I think.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul, for writing in.
Way to go.
From Dubuque, Iowa.
If you have any of our listeners, if you have any questions, comments, corrections, compliments, birthday wishes, whatever it be, you can write in to culturallyirrelevantpod@gmail.com. Again, the email is culturallyirrelevantpod@gmail.com.
Or find Miguel on Twitter.
Please do not send us your pitches for joining the show. We have thousands of requests, and we're denying all of them right now. Please only send your criticisms and corrections.
Blanket denials.
What if we get like Joe Rogan?
We're not interested. We don't want Joe Rogan on this show. He wouldn't be able to stay clean enough for 5 minutes to be on this show, first of all.
He's also very culturally relevant, which doesn't work for
that's
kind of our shtick.
He does seem to be coming around a little bit on the whole.
Nah, I think he's
pulling a move like your friend. You're going from agnosticism, I think, to Catholic.
I think he's just a good interviewer.
Catholicism. He is also a very nice player with everybody else. You might be right about that.
So I do want to get another correction. A lot of people watch The Four Nations. My point was not that nobody was watching The Four Nations. I watched it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think the bigger point that ended up, very sadly, the point that ended up coming to fruition is that having players take 2 weeks out to be in this, what turned out to be a very competitive tournament, could have some unfortunate risks involved. And again, the one that I am talking about that came to fruition is Matthew Tkachuk ended up injuring himself pretty severely in the semifinal, decided to try to play through it in the final. Or I don't know if he I can't remember. Did he play through it or did they sit him down? I think he did try to play through it. Either way, again, I'm sorry. I should have looked that up. Whatever your name was on TikTok.
Stay uninformed. We can't say his name on TikTok because it was so offensive.
Yeah.
Loser.
Anyways, follow us. But so now it looks like he's going to end up missing probably the next 2 months of the season for the Panthers, and also a very real chance that he won't even be available for the playoffs or any point for the rest of this season.
The Panthers need him for the playoffs, as if they're going to the playoffs now.
What are you talking about? We actually we're winning 4-1 right now against the Nashville Predators.
Let's go Panthers.
No one cares. No one cares.
Preds.
No one cares.
It's from the Mississippi State basketball guy.
No,
I actually remembered it.
Will's a Predator.
I am a Predator.
Did I ever tell you? I think I've told you before that hoodie that the Nashville Predators put out. And I think it went to like Fanatics on clearance pretty quickly, but it was just a gray hoodie that just said Predator across the front. Like no logo or anything, just
There's
Predator.
a bunch of people in Africa where they ship that thing to.
There's got to be
Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl winners and
Predator.
Yeah.
There has to be at least a couple people that bought that hoodie that just walking out in public, never really putting 2 and 2 together. That's just wearing a hoodie that just says Predator across the middle.
Like,
Man.
Just strolling around, Broadway in Nashville, trying to have a good time. Everybody's staying away from them.
come on, let's go walk on the other side of the street. This is a predator coming down the road.
Yeah, this
Well,
must
you
be.
said you had a third correction.
This must be court mandated.
Yes, Miguel, you are so freaking wrong on
Here we go again.
yes,
with me.
yes.
My gosh.
You are so freaking wrong on the tax credits versus checks thing. Like you're asking for money, like you want a stimulus check. Like no,
I'm just being honest with the boys. That's all. I'm just being honest.
No,
I'm sharing how I feel. That's
we
all.
want tax credits. This is the way that the manner in which we as Americans should be paid back is through tax credits, not stimulus checks. This isn't Barack Obama. This isn't Obama phone. We don't get like.
Am I wrong in my understanding that
Trump is the one that started the stimulus checks, not Barack Obama?
that was a bad idea at the time?
No,
but
not true. That's not true.
Am I wrong in the idea in the assumption that stimulus implies creating money out of thin air, or is that not necessary?
Yes. No, that is a correct assertion for what a stimulus check is.
I mean, judging from what we're learning about how our government is run, it's not like they have a cash pool sitting around where they can cut checks from. So they got to print that money, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I want my money back. I stand by that.
Is tax credits the same as tax dividends, or is those also different concepts?
No, I think that we would be talking about different. Well, I don't know.
That was David's point last episode. He tried to correct it also and say you don't want stimulus, you want tax dividends.
No, David said he didn't want any of it.
No, yeah, you're right.
I said we don't want stimulus. We want a tax dividend.
I don't want any of it either. Like because here's the thing.
I'm the one that wants free money, I guess.
No, I want my money back.
There's no such thing as free money, Miguel.
In the middle.
There's no such thing as free money, and I resent you for saying that because you know better.
It was a joke.
Okay.
It was not a joke.
I don't feel like it was a joke. It wasn't said in a joking manner. I think that tax credits are the right answer, and I say this because those who pay taxes are going to need that money back. They deserve that money back. For those who do not pay taxes, why am I giving you a stimulus check? Prime example, back in around about the time that I graduated from high school, when Obama's first term, I believe, he passed a stimulus package for Americans to receive a stimulus check, and I got a stimulus check. It was a direct deposit straight into my bank account.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Oh, I think it was $600 that I received. Fabulous. But when you give, and I was a college student, right? I had no business like receiving that money. I hadn't given anything to society. I hadn't done anything for society at that point. So why am I receiving a stimulus check? But by the time that you give out all of that money across the board to Americans, guess what you have now done? Because we're not flush with cash here in the United States, we're having to borrow some more, which drives up inflation, which means that you're paying more for everything that you buy on a daily basis. So it's almost offsetting everything that you like. If you're not going to pay you'll have $600 in your bank, but 6 months from now, as we're still trying to figure out as a federal government how we're going to keep the doors open by passing omnibus bills or continuing resolutions, whatever the case may be, guess what's going to happen when we pass those bills? We're going to have to print more money. The rates are going to go up.
Well, and also the theory a lot of the time, I think this is back, with the stimulus that you're talking about, Will, to where the economic theory behind it was to give, a boost to the economy. So the hope was that, I got my $600 check and now I'm going to use that to go and, buy a TV or something. It's like but what it ends up being time and time again is people are just taking that money and just paying down other debts that they have.
That's exactly right.
It's not creating new, economic opportunity for any. It's not going back into our economy. It's just going to, repay money that was already spent in the first place.
For all those idiots out there that were talking about occupying Wall Street and eat the rich and all that kind of ridiculous rhetoric, stimulus checks, the only people that benefits are big banks and financial institutions. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who get paid. Because a person's going to pay off their car or pay some of the debt down on their car or their house before they go and spend discretionary funds on a new TV, like you said, or an Xbox or whatever.
Especially in the time of a recession where everybody has maxed out credit cards collecting 23% interest rates. It's like they're just trying to survive and keep their head above water so they're not so upside down on everything else. So, yeah, the theory behind it, it's not rooted in real life.
It's absurd, yes.
Let the record show that my corner has been corrected.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Elon Musk, if you send me any tax dividends,
what's this week's dumb take, Miguel?
No, I've canceled Habits for Humanity due to how bruised my ego was last week. I may or may not resurrect a new segment called Anthropological Advice, but we're going to test that out in future weeks. I'm still a little shaky from my experience last week. I went in feeling really good about it, came out full of bullet holes, but you know what? That's the way it goes in Culturally Irrelevant. We don't stand for nonsense here, and if you speak it, we'll shove it back down.
I had a lot teed up for you, Miguel. I apologize.
You should have shown up to this.
Take any more weeks off, Will? You're not allowed.
You should have shown up.
It just gives me 2 weeks to prepare for all of my corrections.
You should have shown up to this week's show wearing Drake's bullet hole hoodie with smoke coming out of it.
It's a good thing I wasn't on last week's show because I couldn't tell you any of the CDs that you guys were listing off.
We know, Dad.
Yeah, well,
boys, I think we've been culturally irrelevant long enough. This is a good episode we threw together. We left a lot of political topics on the cutting room floor. We'll start bringing those back in the next couple weeks. Make sure you stay tuned. We're always bringing you the hot stuff with the wittiest humor and a little bit of Bible at the same time. I feel like today was a pretty Bible-heavy episode for us, and I kind of like that. We're going to try to do that a little more often. Thanks for guiding us down those trails, Will.
Thanks, Will.
Let's all have a mental exercise every time we tune into Culturally Irrelevant.
If I have to.
If we went from Yeezy last week to Yeez Us.
Hey, there you go. You do listen. All right, shut us down quick before Miguel shares another opinion.
All right, guys. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Love you. This is David again.
Miss you, David.
Miss you, David.
My night vision. Reveal yourself. What do all your self features like?
This has been an episode of Culturally Irrelevant, a production by us. Check it out on X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or any other major podcast platform by searching for the Culturally Irrelevant Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you back with the boys next week.